Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Ron Paul Liberty Report. With us today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. And we want to talk about a subject we visited very much in the past, and that had to do with passports, especially, the vaccine passports. And, bad ideas never seem to die. There's people who are determined. They tried to really work this hard in the European Union, and they had a lot of people sign up, but basically nobody was saying, boy, this is perfect. We can control everybody, and everybody wants to be like us. Matter of fact, they were having trouble. So they were looking for some help to really get this off, because they're determined, the globalists want it, because can you keep track of people around the world unless you don't have this cooperation? So the globalists marched in. So where did they go to get some help and cooperation? To the World Health Organization. And they did such a fine job in giving advice about COVID and the lockdown, about personal liberty. But they always had these special goals to help the people, take care of the people. So they're working together now. Now, here's a statement from an article put up by Zero Hedge I found this morning. The World Health Organization, WHO, said it will take up the European Union's digital COVID-19 vaccine passport framework as part of a new global network of digital health certificates. So, they don't call it, vaccine and passports and this sort of thing. It's a digital health certificate. Sounds good. And they have a lot of glowing things, how the advantages of having world government and a world organization to make sure they know everybody has the equal benefit to their great wisdom, and that they will be able to protect their health and have access to health, all these wonderful things. But Chris, quite frankly, I don't know how anybody could be too optimistic about this. People should be concerned. There's no doubt about it. There's still a lot of people. But if you look at the statistics, maybe there's more resistance than they realize. And maybe there's more resistance than so many people suffered for going through the lockdowns, with COVID. So the one lesson here I think that we should emphasize is the fact that they're not going to give up no matter how much failure there is, no matter how much failure there was for lockdown. They just didn't do it right. We didn't have the right people doing it. And we need to be authoritarian. We need to force them to do it if they're not smart enough to do it at our suggestion. So I think, Chris, this subject is not going to go away, but hopefully we can contribute to warning the people to beware and build resistance to these plans, not only whether it's the United States, whether it's the European Union, whether it's the United Nations or WHO or whatever. It'll come in all formats. And then we also have to worry about wokeism with the use of government pressure on corporations and having people go along with these plans, not so much because, oh yeah, this sounds like a good idea. This sounds like it'll be very good for the world health. And they might be going there out of coercion and force. So we have to try to keep our eye on the ball, and the eye on the ball. Is it enhancing our liberty and our safety, or is it doing the opposite? If it's doing the opposite, we should caution the people to be very careful. Chris.
That's right, Dr. Paul. And, the fact that the World Health Organization has the nerve to even mention the words vaccine passport, it's astonishing. But like you said, not surprising. Failure never deters people that are interested in power. And, but they must think that this is 2019. Back then, they had the media, they had the social media. The whole thing was churning until the truth finally came out. And, the window of trust has closed on them and their vaccines and all of it. And people back then, many were naive, but many also had no reason not to trust the authorities in that situation. There was no precedent. But, they trusted the wrong people, unfortunately. And as a result, there are so many people that will never again get another vaccine, no matter what the conditions. and especially if the government recommends it. And they're also, I see headlines with kids that they're now questioning that. So they ruined their credibility, the doctors, the scientists, the so-called experts, the media. And to now try to talk about vaccine passports, it makes them look very foolish. But, there was not very much accountability. So from their perspective, why not? They need something to do over there. They really should, close up shop and go get real jobs that actually serve people. But I guess they need something to do. So why not just, reignite this terrible idea of vaccine passport tyranny? Fortunately, the cost was great, but they lost all trust.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right about they're bold when they start talking about this vaccine passport. And in this article, there's a quote coming from the Europeans, and they said, as part of this new joint venture, Europe's existing framework of digital vaccine passports will serve as the first building block of a global network of digital health products. That's pretty bold and pretty broad, but it's part of the intimidation and scaring people. People are calmed down now. So what I fear, because they're capable of never giving up, they might not have exactly COVID again, but they might have something else worse to get scared about, because they have to put fear into the hearts of so many people to go along with this. And this is something that has been existing for a long time, and they claim that it's an important thing. They want to really serve the interests, so they have to brag about all the good things that they're going to do. And one of the arguments they use is everybody needs access. You have to have it. And people are dumb. Medical professions don't know how to practice medicine, and even local governments can't handle this. People travel, so everybody has to have access, and that's how we need to have control. And so diseases can spread, and information needs to be disseminated by government, because there'll be false information and they have to be canceled if they're telling the truth. That is actually what they're doing when it's false according to their efforts. And if you're going to have access to it, you have to have the medical care delivered. How do you do it if you just identify them? No, you need a World Health Organization, to come together and make sure everybody is healthy. And I keep thinking, if you have one individual that claims he has knowledge about what is right and nobody else knows what's going on, if they get involved, like a Dr. Fauci got pretty much involved, just think of the damage they do. One person. If people say, oh, well, we can't let it up to the individual to make a decision on his health care and whether he wants to go holistic or so go out or go find their own physician, this sort of thing. They have to assume that the government has to tell them. And, then if a individual in a free market in medicine or whatever makes a mistake, they could be hurt. But it might be a motive to be careful and sort out the truth from their fiction. And their big pitch is, just think of how these diseases spread. We got to do it. You can't just tell people, maybe they see some shortcomings on their lockdown. Just stay in your house. So they want something else. They want to be able to have another excuse, and they will always devise and say that there's a threat out there. But that, Chris, I think that's where they've really weakened, and I think that's why they've backed off, and they're not trusting the government as much as before. And some of that we should see as good news.
It is good news. And one thing that I would recommend for people is always be aware of the globalists and what their schemes are, and try to understand it the best you can. But I wouldn't fear it so much. There are a lot of people that are just terrified. But, the UN, the WHO, these they don't have armies. They don't have taxing power. Nobody has to listen to them. Countries pay a lot of lip service to them, especially when it comes to climate. Oh, yeah, zero this, zero that. And then they go back to their normal lives. The heck with that nonsense. So nobody has to listen to them. But media and the way things are portrayed to you, it could make it look scary, like this big, all these walls are closing in. But it's not so easy, even imposing things just in this country. I mean, look at what Ron DeSantis did in Florida. He threw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. Even if everybody else was doing the same thing, he said, look at Florida. We don't have masks down here. We don't have all these mandates. Kids are going to school. And everybody saw it, and it just ruined the whole thing. So it only takes a few courageous people, and they always pop up somewhere, you don't know where, to just throw everything off. And it ultimately, at the end, comes down to you. You don't have to listen to them. There are plenty of people, no matter the mandates, getting fired from the jobs, they resisted getting the jabs. So their ultimate sovereignty comes down to themselves. And the further away you get from yourself, the less control you have. And when you go global, they have virtually none. It's just they have very good PR. And, just understanding them and avoiding them the best you can is the best thing to do, not to fear them.
Chris, I think your best point there is don't overdo the fear, be on the defense. But that's going to be around. What we have to do is know how to handle the propaganda that comes, because that's the motivation. They do it in foreign policy. If we don't do this, if we don't go and save Ukraine, the Russians will be on our doorstep. That sort of thing. Scare them to death so that the people go along with it. And the other thing is, and they did it with COVID, if you aren't participating, you're a very bad person, you're unpatriotic, and you could lose your job. And that sort of thing. So they use certain things that can intimidate. So when they do that, people say, well, if I could lose my job, this is a big deal. They might not even believe it. They might even understand the fear thing, but they also, weigh the pros and cons. And some people, will be frightened to death to do it. That's why when somebody comes along and all of a sudden stands up to them, when everybody else is telling them what they have to do, and even people who sacrifice, like the tennis player, what he has done, and he stood up for it. I mean, he's heroic by standing up to it, and it gives other people the courage. But they will continue to do this, and the fear factor will be there, and they will keep trying to scare people, and have to go along, and they scare them when it becomes an economic thing. Social media participates in it. The corporations generally participate in it. The pharmaceutical companies participate in it. Our professors participate in it. And one of the most annoying part is when the leadership in the so-called medical community, the AMA and others, they participate in it too. And that makes it pretty tough for the average person to say, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. But look, everybody's saying, get scared, be scared, do something about it, because the world's coming to an end. And so it's back to this whole thing. People who don't believe in truth and the people who that do, they compete. The people who want to tell the truth are the villains, and they can get punished by it, and they can get canceled. And the social media is a powerful weapon. So people need to understand that whole picture in order to handle the emotions, and realizing that the solution to this is not complicated. Just understand what the principles of liberty are all about, and they should come around to our position of dealing with problems like this on a freedom philosophy.
Excellent, Dr. Paul. Yeah, I'll close up my final comments. Bad ideas are a dime a dozen. In fact, that's what Washington, D.C. specializes in. They print money and they come up with one terrible idea after another. And, whenever you hear a person, even in your own life, start a sentence with, everyone should get, or everyone should have to, realize that they really don't know what they're talking about. And Washington does this on a daily basis right now. Everyone should have to. And it just does not work that way. Life is not that way. We are all human beings, yes, but we're individual human beings with our own values, our own environments, local environments, our own local situations, our own financial condition, our own, we're all so different. And one tiny change that happens, and everybody adapts. People evade. They do whatever they can to make sure that they themselves and their families are taken care of. And nobody can anticipate outside how everything is going to work for 7 billion people. You know, these globalists are talking about 7 billion people. And the idea itself that there's going to be this one organization is also contrary to human nature. You know, part of our life is people fight. There's conflict constantly. So to think that there's going to be one organization that's going to dictate to the world, the belief is that everybody else is just going to go on with it. No, there's going to be constant conflict. Same way it is within the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. There's conflict within those parties. They hate each other because they are the dictator and the other person shouldn't be. So this idea of globalism is very silly, but it's, you know, very enticing for people that have a lot of money and nothing to do. And but we have to, in our own personal lives, understand that this is how it works and just do our best to evade and keep the spirit of liberty alive.
You know, sometimes, Chris, when I see all this and they're doing things, whether it's on this particular subject or anything else on lockdown, you wonder why they're doing it. It seems so strange and it's so harmful. And it seems even harmful for the corporations to participate. So why do they do it? And I think there are some who have a deliberate goal, and that is to turn our whole society into some type of a fascist system. But when you know that the people who make the noise about fascism so much are the ones that are the most fascist, and that I think happens so often, like Antifa, you know, oh yeah, we're going to go after this fascist system. But I think it's what we're dealing with. If we're not dealing with the purity of a communist system that the Soviets had, not that there wouldn't be some there that would want to go in that direction, but it's a combination of markets that become beneficial to corporations and they take over, and then there's corporatism, which means that it's a form of the early stages of really fascism, and that I think is one thing that's coming about. But I also see some advantages here. When you see individuals like RFK Jr., you know, getting traction because he's shifting a bit, in my opinion, he's shifting a bit from the pure liberal socialistic trends and talks about, you know, the corporations. He's always been good on corporations abuse, but he's beginning to talk more about, you know, pharmaceutical business people, big business with the military. So that's being exposed. I think more people have to see that, and I think it's critical because that's where most of the lying is going on who are the good guys and who are the bad guys and who's telling the truth. But that, I think, is a very, very important thing because right now they have the attention of the major media outlets, but there's challenges there endlessly. So that's why I think that our message is so wonderful and so powerful that it's so vital that the one thing on the bottom line of what we need to preserve is our right to speak out and not be punished for it, which is involved in the First Amendment. And that's what's being challenged right now. So many people are getting punished for speaking the truth. I see what we're going through right now as a challenge between nihilism, where they say, why are you guys worrying about the truth? It doesn't exist. Nobody can objectively define truth. Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe we shouldn't even talk about it. No, they actually believe that. So that is difficult. Now, the other side generally, almost always, has to agree on a higher law, a natural law, something that's bigger than the politicians. And that is the contest that goes on. And right now, though, there's still a lot of nihilists out there claiming, you guys don't know the truth. They cover it over. I keep thinking, when I listen to some of the politicians, they don't believe any of this, but they're saying words. But the thing of it is, I think after a while, the people wake up and say, I don't believe them. And that's why it's good to hear the story when they do a poll and find out that 68% of the American people don't trust the government. I mean, that's not good that happens, but it's good if the people, if it's true and the people have recognized it, because that's the step going in the right direction. But it is a battle, I think, between truth and the liars who think it's their religious duty, in a religious sense, that we shouldn't have these people using morality to defend some of these principles and talking about a natural law. So I think we're in the midst of this battle. We're going to hear about it because, quite frankly, it's been going on for thousands of years. So we have our ups and downs. Right now, we've had 100 and some years of a loss of liberty and the concept and understanding of liberty. And right now, I think there is a true awakening of people becoming aware of what it is. But we have a long way to go to prevent the building and the more controlled by those who don't want to tell the truth, who represents the authoritarians, and the people have to be taken care of. So if we have a little bit of problem with medicine, the United Nations and WHO will come to their rescue and make sure we have perfect medical care. That attitude has to be changed, and we will do our best to understand and pass out and spread the message of liberty. Because I'm convinced if you want prosperity and peace, that's the way to go. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.